So Tom DeLonge from Blink 182 has made a horror movie. I don't know if I'd go as far as to call this a horror movie, to be honest, but yeah, it just recently came out. And if you know anything about Tom, not just his music, of course. I mean, I grew up on Blink 182, so I mostly know him from that. But the other thing I know him for these days is his obsession with the paranormal, with UFOs most specifically. And so when I saw he was making a film, I was like, oh, this is probably going to have to do with UFOs. And yes, of course. Now, Monsters of California definitely tackles more than just UFOs, but they say some stuff in it where it's kind of pointing towards that it is just UFOs. You'll see when you watch it, but we follow these three friends, which basically mirror Blink 182, Bink 182, Blink 182. That's what it felt like. It's very like skater, stoner, Southern California dudes searching for aliens and ghosts and Bigfoot and whatever, right? So if you're into that kind of humor, I could absolutely see this working for a certain group of people. Overall, I thought it was fine. Um, the chemistry between the three friends is actually pretty good. I actually believed them to be like buddies, and so I thought that was handled pretty well. The love interest that we get thrown in here is kind of classic love interest. She's just some hot babe who is there as kind of an object for the guy. As far as her like character development or anything goes, there's really not much. There's a little attempted here, but she's just there as kind of like eye candy and to accompany the guys and throw in a little bit extra lines. So, that just kind of reminds me of how I would talk about the guys in this movie as far as like the humor and their characters. They very much feel like they are of Tom's generation, right? I don't hang out with 20-year-old guys anymore, so maybe they still act like this, but the guys in this acted like 1990s teen, like 20-year-olds, like me and my friends were. And a lot of like dick jokes and like pretend homosexuality for humor. That's like classic 90s dudes. We're always like, you know pretending to want to like be gay with each other for fun. It always made us laugh, and probably hiding our real homosexuality. No, I don't know. But it's just the way that this, as I said, I don't hang out with 20 something year olds nowadays. I'm too old, but I don't know. I do they still act like this? Because Tom, of course, is like around my age, a little older, but we're still of that same generation, and I feel like he's writing these characters that would fit more in like the early 2000s, late 90s. But I don't know. As far as the UFO and all of that stuff, we have some familiar faces. Casper Van Dien shows up, another actor whose name I forget, but um, as far as like the supernatural elements in here, they're mostly played for laughs, but the film definitely has a more serious side. And I will say, I find that this film is probably not obviously only like very important to Tom because he believes very much in what he's putting out here, because this was written by him as well, along with someone else. But you can tell he's very passionate about this material, but it almost feels almost semi autobiographical. I don't know if that's what he's going for in this film, but yeah, it feels like Blink 182 is meets Scooby Doo or something, right? And yeah, it's okay. I liked it. I liked it. there's a weird narration from the main character throughout that kind of felt unnecessary, but at the same time, I get why it's there. I just didn't know exactly who he was talking to. You know, with narration, I can usually figure out the purpose of it. But with this one, I was kind of wondering. It just felt kind of shoehorned in because it was trying to say something to the audience and fill in blanks where they didn't have it in the plot. But that's just how I felt while watching it. Also, another weird thing was they had this music in it that was very similar. We'll say similar, if not just outright copied, or is just instrumental. Jesus Christ, instrumental music. Versions of other songs in other films that I recognized instantaneously. There's one that plays twice that is like that real hero from Drive that plays multiple times throughout Drive, but it has like the exact same beat to it. That dun 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 dun. You know what I'm talking about. But it just has no lyrics to it. I thought for sure it was that song, but it never got to the lyrics. And I'm like, is this just an instrumental version or is this just a ripoff? So I don't know what was going on there. And there was another song that reminded me a lot of, I think it was I Melt With You, because I was like, oh, we're in Valley Girl now. But yeah, so if you're into like skater 90s dudes hanging out and you want to see them going looking for aliens, I do think that there's some interesting stuff in here because a lot of, in fact, almost all of what is in this film, if not all of what's in this film, and this doesn't surprise me with Tom because he's so into this stuff and he goes on like Joe Rogan and he goes on all these different places to talk about this stuff. I almost feel like this is his attempt without getting in trouble in his eyes. Like the government's going to come at him and they're like, you can't say anything about what you've seen. So he like puts it in a film as fiction and he's like, but this is real. This happened. You know, that kind of stuff. Because that's definitely what's going on here. Because the stuff that's in this movie, everything they talk about, whether it's the aliens or Bigfoot or religion or whatever, is all stuff I've heard before. Even like the freezing of water when you talk bad to it versus talk good to it. Like this is in all sorts of different documentaries and stuff that I've watched over the years. So he's really covering a lot of material that is, you know, said to or believed to be true by people who follow this stuff. So as I said, this is a passion project of his, and I can only assume he put this out as not only just like a kind of fun comedy, but once again, there is so much focus on the stuff that we know people in these circles believe. And because he's so into this, I can only imagine that this is supposed to be like, no, but for real, this stuff is real. Which, if you're into that and you believe that, that's cool. I don't have any issue with that. Some of it, I can understand why people believe it, and I'm even open to the idea of it because some of it makes sense. And there's definitely some melodramatic moments. There's stuff going on with the loss of his father. His father went missing and they have a decent amount of scenes like with him and his mom because his mom's trying to move on and he doesn't want her to. Also with this girl, the love interest, they're having some moments on like the beach and other places where he's like really getting super deep and personal. And that was kind of surprising because of how playful and silly the film felt. But it added some, you know, genuine kind of emotion to the film and gave it a little bit more credibility. So I think it's a fine, directorial debut. I I guess when I went into it wanting it to be horror, I guess I should have noticed that it was Tom. I did, but that it was probably going to be more on the side of like comedy and not so serious and whatever. So yeah, very, 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 very mild horror. There's like an opening scene which is kind of trying to play horror-ish. There's a Bigfoot scene that's kind of playing horror-ish, but mostly played for laughs. So I don't know. I wouldn't go in this expecting a horror film. It's not, even if it has some elements. But if I was to say one band that I grew up with during the 90s that I love that made a horror movie, I would much rather watch Studio 666 by the Foo Fighters. That movie's awesome. It's funny. It's graphic and gory as hell. It is a blast. I really enjoyed the hell out of that movie. This one, not as much, but still an okay watch. And I always loved Blink 182, and I will support them as musicians. And I'll see what Tom does next if he does another. I could even see a follow-up to this if it does well enough, but I'm not really hearing anyone talk about it, so I'm not going to hold my breath on that. But I also wouldn't want to hold my breath because I'm not anticipating it, but I'd check it out if it came out. But Monsters of California, there you go. It's okay. Let me know.